Recording 10-3-12. You said you wanted to tell a story, Victor. What is it? I think you'll like this one, Dr. Pierce. It's a good story. Then tell it. A long time ago, maybe 20 or 30 years ago, a boy named Ryan was in high school. The day was like any other. I woke up, got dressed, and brushed my teeth. I tried to sneak out before my dad woke up, not managing to and getting a quick "you piece of shit" before I left. I started the long walk to school, past one block, then another, then a third. I popped in the earphones to my phone, turning on some music. I kept walking, seeing a group of self-proclaimed cool kids sitting at the local coffee shop, smoking and laughing at anyone who dared to walk by. Today, I was the lucky winner. "Hey, asswipe," Vic yelled. I ignored him. "Bitch, he was talking to you." Stacy, his girlfriend, stepped in front of me. "Move. Do something for yourself once. We're in high school. The fact that you're still in this dumb clique is childish." I stepped to the side. She mirrored me. "Push him, Stacy," Vic yelled, the others cheering. She listened, shoving me back and causing me to spill all of my stuff onto the ground. They stood around me, laughing, while I shoved my stuff into my bag. They stopped and I looked at them, seeing Vic with my sketchbook. I felt my heart stop, knowing most of those drawings were the different ways I wanted to see Vic. A hole in his head, his guts spilling into the floor, ripped in half. These were just a few. "So, you can think you're fucking tough, bitch? Drawing your little pictures about how you want me to die? I'll show you Hey, get away from that kid," the coffee shop owner yelled, walking towards us. Vic and his friends ran off, throwing my book onto the floor. I thanked the owner and stood, looking at the ground as I walked away. I put my headphones back in, turning on my favorite song. I walked to the school, quickly rushing to my favorite teacher, sitting down and starting to draw. I drew Vic, falling out of a window, getting impaled on glass. I laughed to myself and smiled. This brief moment of peace was interrupted when the door slammed open. "So, this is your new hideout? Good to see you like school, bitch," Vic said, walking over. He grabbed the page out of my sketchbook, the one I was just drawing. He studied it, his face contorting in bitter rage. He crumpled it up and threw it on the ground. "So, you do think you're tough," he said, his voice carrying a creepy tone of calm. No, Vic, Shut up! Drawing pictures of how you'd kill me? Ignoring me when I'm talking to you? You must be retarded!" he yelled, his group surrounding me. They moved in closer, backing me towards a window. I looked at them like a deer in the headlights, obviously fearing for my life. "Vic, please, I'm sorry," I begged, hoping against hope that they wouldn't kill me. "Travis, Brock, Mark," the three other guys looked at Vic. "Let's play a ring around the rosy." "Push him." He pushed me to Brock. They pushed me around the circle, laughing and smiling. I told them to stop. I told them to let me go. They didn't listen. They pushed me until I lost my balance and fell back, falling out the window of the second floor. They looked scared as I fell, hitting the ground with a snap. There was a glass in my chest. I felt blood dripping out and I knew I had broken bones. But I stood, looking around. I noticed people running over to see me. I tried to talk to them, but they went past me, running to my body. What the hell? I died. "Get back!" I heard a teacher yell. She ran to my body, calling an ambulance. I looked at the window I fell out of and saw Vic staring at my body. Or was it me he was looking at? He was looking me in the eye. He could see me. I walked into the school and up the stairs, walking towards the classroom. This was my new purpose. Revenge. I pulled a glass shard from my chest and walked closer. Vic turned to me, looking me head on. I walked to Travis and slit his throat. The only one who saw what happened was me and Vic. The others just screamed. I laughed and they all ran. For weeks, I followed them, purposely staying away from them. Vic would see me and it grew a paranoia inside of him. I would find my way to the others. Brock was first. I followed him, trying my best to show up in the mirrors and dreams. He would see me for a second up until the point that I killed him. I pushed a shard of glass through his heart, a sickening smile on my face. He looked at me, a begging pleading like I was when they pushed me. I watched him die. I taped a picture of him that I drew a long time ago onto his chest once he died, and smiled. In the picture, he had died in the same way. I watched as Vic saw what had become of his friend. I watched him realize who drew the picture taped to his friend. The way he cried and begged for people to see what was going on. This was so much fun. Mark was after Brock. He was harder to push to insanity. He was interesting. He would get mad, yelling things like, "Kill me already," and "Show yourself, bitch." I hated that word. I waited until he was getting into the shower. I used the shower head to hang him. I made it look like suicide. I laughed and watched him strangle out. I put a picture of him being executed by hanging in the mirror. I thought for a second, then slit his wrists and drew out, "Sorry, Vic," in the blood above the picture. I watched Vic drop further into insanity. Stacy was killed on prom night, fitting for her to die in a beautiful dress. She wasn't as bad as the others. I watched her walk up and accept her crown for prom queen. I thought for a second, then moved to the sandbag ropes. I cut the one above her. Screams of "watch out," then crack. She was buried under 5 bags of sand. When the paramedics came, they said her spine and neck were both snapped. She looked at me as she was carted off, her dead, lifeless eyes staring blankly at me. I left a picture of her coated in pig's blood, much like Carrie. I stood and smiled holding my glass, looking directly at Vic who ran at me, getting himself carried off to a mental institution. And Ryan is still hunting Vic to this day, Doctor. Isn't your name Victor? Maybe the nightmares you have is caused by you thinking that you're this Vic. Dr. Pierce, don't you get it? I am Vic. He's coming for me. Cut recording. Recording 10/4/12. Patient Victor Tremor is now deceased. He died by impalement and fall. He was pushed out of the window, which should have had a metal cage on it, and he should have been supervised. We'll be checking our staff for negligence in the following hours. This is the final recording on Victor Tremor. Greenville was a quiet, humble little town, about 3 miles across. Plunked down in the middle of Nevada, it was obscured by the surrounding desert. Very few people came to visit, and when they did, it was simply to stop for gas, a meal, maybe 1 or 2 nights at the local hotel. Still, we were proud. Around the early 90s, a radio station emerged from the middle of the town known as Strongbeat Radio. There were a few DJs there, but the most popular was known as Sammy Smooth. Sammy, whose real name was Samuel Heidi, was the son of the owner of Strongbeat. He had a slurred yet energetic voice, fun to listen to. He cracked jokes, made cynical remarks, the works. On the front page of the local newspaper, 1998, April, perhaps March, something like that, was an article that he had been diagnosed with bipolar disorder, and a very unstable kind, type 1. Later that year, sometime in August to October, another case showed that he was acting extremely hostile towards his coworkers. Some people thought this was simply his irritability, a symptom of bipolar disorder. Some theorized he was a sociopath, although this theory was controversial and unrealistic. Although, maybe it was true, looking back. 2003 rolled around, and with it, a shocking report. My 17-year-old self understood mental illnesses much better, and so this seemed so alien, so malicious, even for someone with such manic depression. He had burned down the radio station. He had to skip work that day, for reasons he claimed were connected to his depression. During the middle of the day, when the radio was playing "Start the Commotion," he arrived. The whole scene was shrouded with mystery, but from what observers could make out, he used gasoline and matches to burn down the station. He, as well as most of the people working there, were burned to death. This included his father, John Heidi. Whether his own death was intentional or not was up to debate. This was pretty scary shit, even if I was 17. If he didn't die, he could have been committing more homicides, and even though he was pushing up daisies, something felt wrong. The town was lovely, and nothing bad really happened, other than the occasional robbery or public offense. Something like this was off, unheard of, and unpredictable. You could say he was a dead air. Cut to 2012, when I was 26. Obviously, I could drive now, and I loved taking long rides in the dark of night. It seemed peaceful and comforting. "Hey Wilson," my friend called out to me at the gas station. My tank was nearly empty, so I needed some fuel to knock it up a notch. I groaned at the gas prices and looked back at him, a bit startled. "What? What is it?" I called back in an irritated voice. "Nothing, man. I was just saying hi." "Then just fucking say hi." "Whoa, man. What got you in such a shitty mood?" "Not that you're ever not in one." I snarled a bit at him. "God, could you just shut up for once? How the fuck are we even friends?" He pouted at me. I continued speaking. "And besides, Don, I'll remind you I don't like talking a lot while I'm doing my drives." "Shit, man. You could have just said." He wasn't putting up with my bullshit, and he just walked off to his own vehicle. I drove off after filling my car, and got in a better mood. Everything felt great. I was on top of the world, all that good stuff. I'll never do this again for as long as I live. I like to drive into the desert, on the freeway, sometimes off the road a bit. While on the freeway, I hear a popping noise. Shit. I got out of the car and observed my tires. My back left one popped, and I noticed a shard of glass in it. Pulled the glass out. Brown, probably from a beer bottle. "Fuck you," I said, to whoever did a break bottle here, even if they would not hear it. "Fuck you, fuck you, fuck you." I called a nearby auto service provider, and he said it would cost a bit to replace the tire. $200, which I felt was overpriced. But whatever. They said that they were busy, and that they might be over in about an hour. So an hour in the middle of the desert, with no one around, and nothing to do. Marvelous. I went back in the car. The late autumn air was chilly, and since I was wearing shorts, well, I didn't exactly want to take a stroll. The sun was setting. At least I got to see that. I turned on the radio and began browsing stations. 'Twas the same old country music, occasional trashy pop and rock. I kept going from station to station and came across 93.3. It was the frequency Strongbeat was on. Normally, it would just be static. No one bothered putting any new stations up on that frequency, and so dead air it was. But this time, it wasn't static. It was just silence. Like something was being broadcast somewhere, but no sound was being produced. I decided keeping it on was a good idea, just to listen to whatever was going on. The sun set as I did this, and to my shock, I heard a familiar jingle, the same one Strongbeat played. It was composed of electric guitars and xylophones, an odd but recognizable combination, at least to me. Hey guys, this is Sammy Smooth, and you're listening to Strongbeat Radio, where the jams and slams be. I forgot his atrocious grammar. It would be laughable if I wasn't fucking confused. And this goes out to my main man, he continued, Wilson. I let out a screech. What the fuck? How the fuck did he know my name? No, it was a coincidence. Had to be. But the radio started playing, So Happy Together. That was my favorite song as a child. Still though, just luck. Coincidences happen, right? I was a bit happy to hear the song, and I couldn't help but crack a bit of a smile. That is until it ended, when it immediately cut back to Sam's unusually coarse voice. Did you enjoy that, Wilson? I jumped again, but remember the whole coincidence thing. Just keep calm, I thought to myself. This is just some tribute or something. You're wrong thinking that. I began panting, and frantically switched the station, but nothing changed. Sure, the frequency did, but it was the same thing. His awful, angry voice. Stop trying to escape me, Wilson. It won't work. I turned off the radio, and the whole thing went black. No numbers or anything on display, yet I could still hear him, coming from my speakers as if he was trapped in them. He began to laugh. His laugh turned into sobbing. I tried to open the door, but it was locked. I unlocked it and pulled a handle, but it still refused to open. I kicked at it, screaming, desperately trying to escape the manic sobs that Sammy was spurting out. In his sobs, he said things like, I'm so fucking sorry, Dad. Please forgive me. I didn't mean to burn you, honest. Fuck! I yelled, and I began to cry and shake. The sobbing cut to silence. No noise was heard. I turned back on the radio, and it was playing just some random pop music on another frequency. I turned back to 93.3, and it was just the same, continuous dead air. Daniel Keith, a hulking mountain of a man, never said a word after he was hanged. No one reported seeing his ghost either. No strange lights in upper story windows, and no phantom bells heard upon the winds in Rutherfordton, North Carolina. But the soul of an innocent man cast a long shadow that was seen through the years. Back when corporal punishment was carried out in public, when several innocent men and women were arrested for felonious deeds on less evidence than is today needed to bring a case to trial, No one on the jury hearing the trial of Daniel Keith believed him in November 9, 1880. An 8-year-old girl had been murdered. Her body had been found the previous February. It was the type of brutal murder that caused the citizens' desire for justice to overtake their common sense. She had been beaten several times in succession with a large boulder until no life was left in her frail body. Someone reported seeing Daniel near the child's home on the day of her grisly murder. Witnesses testified he had been drinking that day, and it was enough to send a sheriff, N.E. Walker, over to Dan's home. According to the sheriff, Dan was perfectly sober and claimed no knowledge of the murder, but the sheriff found a bloodied shirt hanging on the clothesline. Though Dan protested that he was cleaning rabbits, all Rutherfordton suspected him as the murderer. He went quietly with Walker to the courthouse, certain that innocence would be proven. As days turned to weeks, passerby often reported hearing angry shouts from the jail, where Dan was being kept in a cell against the south wall. Dan was questioned again and again in an attempt to elicit confession. Throughout the months between arrest and trial, he maintained his innocence. "I've killed nobody," he vowed, "and all them say what I did will pay the devil every day for saying it." The trial was short. A number of citizens testified against Daniel Keith. A 16-year-old boy swore he heard the little lass scream and that he saw Dan lumbering away from the scene. In the witness chair, Dan's voice as he proclaimed his innocence was said to be heard clearly across the street. The prosecutor informed the jury that Daniel Keith was a monster, a beast. Less than an hour of recess was needed for the jury to decide. Daniel Keith was to be hanged. His last words were, "The soul of an innocent man don't rest." Several townsfolk gathered for the event, but by the end of the hanging, an entirely new subject was the main topic of conversation. A mysterious shadow had appeared on the south wall of the jail. It remained throughout the night and the next day. Several attempts were made to remove it, but it stayed. In 1949, something happened that ended the story of Daniel Keith and the shadow. An 85-year-old man passed away. The only important detail is that he was the 16-year-old boy who had testified against Daniel Keith so long ago. He was the last of those cursed by Big Dan to die. After his passing, the shadow disappeared, never to return. This is a true incident that happened when I was very young. I do not remember the exact date. I could only wildly guess that this was sometime between 2000 to 2002. I do not even remember which grade I was in at the time. I do not even properly remember my address, including the name of that small town where I had the misfortune to be a witness to this terrifying event. But I could never forget what happened that fateful day. It is one thing when you read those terrifying creepypastas on the internet and get creeped out by it. But it is an entirely different thing to be a part of such a story in real life. I was very mischievous back then, a far cry from my current introvert, lazy-ass form. But then again, most kids that age are not saints either. I lived in a small town somewhere in Odisha, India. It was not exactly small, but the settlements were spread in clusters over a large distance, giving it the appearance of a disjointed town. My house was on the edge of a large forest. There were only a couple more houses in the neighborhood, effectively making it a remote location. There were already incidents of theft in the area, hence every house had a metal grill door installed in addition to the regular door at the entrance for added protection, and ours was no exception. Now the forest surrounding our house was full of guava trees. There were so many guava trees. One could see them spread out as far as the eyes can see. And as a kid, I loved guavas. I had a greed for those green fruits. A greed which I later came to regret. I mostly picked guavas from trees at the edge of the forest with my friends. I usually found them scattered all around the ground, hence I rarely felt the need to climb trees. I would later wash them and eat them with pleasure. One fine evening, I set out too with my friends to pick guavas as usual. When we reached our usual spot, we were shocked to see that the trees were devoid of guavas. We checked a few surrounding trees, ventured a little bit deeper into the forest, but of no avail. It was as if the guavas had vanished overnight. Then, I had this amazingly foolish idea to venture deep into the forest, much, much deeper than we were allowed to. I wanted guavas at any cost, and the forest had seemingly infinite guava trees. I thought that if I kept looking, I would definitely find a tree full of guavas. My friends, well, disagreed with me. They did not have any obsession with guavas like I had, and were certainly not interested in venturing any deeper into the forest, especially as the sun hovered dangerously close to the horizon. But I was determined to explore. There was still light, and it won't be dark until an hour or two. I disregarded their pleadings, and after making them swear that they won't tell my mom about it, I ventured deep into the forest. Deeper and deeper I went. I lost count of how much time I spent searching for guavas. There was no clear path in the forest, but I moved only forward in a straight line. Hence I knew that to return home, I'll just have to turn backwards. After what felt like decades in passing acres of lifeless trees devoid of guavas, I came into a clearing. There, in front of me, was a massive guava tree filled with guavas. I was overjoyed. My wish had been finally granted. Excitedly, I began to climb the tree. I had a small polythene bag with me to collect as much as I could to take back home. The guavas were ripe and soft, just the way I liked it. Then, I heard a noise. The soft, crunching sound one makes when they step over dry leaves. I listened carefully, just to make sure. Another crunching sound, then another. I looked down and saw him. There was a man below, near the tree. He wore a loose, red-stained white shirt and dirty brown pants. He had the appearance of a typical local farmer, which should not raise any red flags, nor the fact that he was there, deep in the forest with a sickle in his hand, for I knew that I certainly was not the only one plucking guavas from the trees in the forest. No, the above-mentioned characteristics are perfectly normal. I guessed he might have come looking for guavas just like me. Pretty normal. But the fact that he did not respond when I repeatedly asked him if he needed some guavas plucked was abnormal. The fact that he had a creepy smile as he looked up at me was abnormal. The fact that he kept circling the tree like a hunter circling its prey was abnormal. The fact that he had a sickle raised in his right hand instead of tucking it away safely in his back was abnormal. All of a sudden, he clung to the tree trunk like a lizard, all while keeping his eyes fixed on me. Then he slowly started climbing the tree. The way he was climbing the tree like an animal was the final straw. I jumped down the tree as he was halfway up the trunk and made a run for it. I was terrified, scared to death. I did not even care to put on my slippers. I ran barefooted, all the way back. All I needed to do was run in a straight line, and I'd be home. I never looked back. I was afraid I'd see him right behind me if I turned. Before long, I reached the familiar spot on the edge of the forest. Seconds later, my house came into view at a distance. I was relieved. I dashed inside and locked all the doors. My mom was watching TV, for I could hear it in the living room, and she probably did not hear me coming. I ran to my bedroom on the first floor and closed the door. I sat on my bed to catch some breath. That face, I could never forget it. That terrifying smile. That night, my mom asked me why I was unusually quiet. She was also surprised that I skipped my late evening cartoons, something that I had never done in the past. Obviously, I chose to keep the matter to myself, so I lied that I was simply not feeling well. After dinner, my mom gave me a couple of medicines, and after tucking me in my bed, retired for the night. I was still shaken by the earlier incident, so I found sleep hard to come by. Sometime near midnight, I heard a slight scratch at the grill door at our house entrance. At first, I dismissed it as a random sound. Then I heard it again, then again. My room had a balcony that opened on the entrance side of our house, so I went there to check the source of the noise. I looked below. There he was, the man from the forest, standing outside in front of the grill door, washed with the light from the nearby street lamp, looking up at me with a creepy smile on his face. I dashed to my mom's room and hid under her blanket. She woke up with a start and asked me what happened. I told her I was having nightmares. She took me in her arms and patted me to sleep. I could still hear the faint scratching sound coming from the front grill as sleep slowly came upon me. I woke up late next morning. My usually strict mom had let me sleep a bit longer than usual, owing to last night's events. I was somewhat comforted by the fact that I had a nice, warm sleep and chose not to think of that any longer. I had a habit of reading newspaper in the morning before I left for school, partly because I liked reading stuff, and partly because my mom wanted me to cultivate the habit. Somewhere in the middle page of the newspaper, tucked away in the corner, was a small article about a dead body recovered from a forest near our town, accompanied by a picture of the dead body. It instantly caught my attention, and I dived further into the details. Then I saw the picture. It was the man from the forest. He had the same outfit as the one I had seen him in. I felt terror gripping me hard. Then I felt sorry for the man. I mean, he was terrifying and had followed me home and had a creepy smile, but I still felt bad for him. The guy whom I saw only 6 to 8 hours ago was no more, and my fear for the guy had turned into pity. Then as I read the rest of the article, the last 2 lines made me drop my bowl of cereal straight onto the floor as my eyes grew wide in horror and shock. The victim's body was found below a huge guava tree in a small clearing deep in the forest. A doctor who had accompanied the police checked the body on site and came to the conclusion that he had been dead for more than a week. The following is a set of brief instructions on how to play the Dead Poets game. Most of you have probably never heard of this ancient phenomenon that circled around England in the late 1800s during the Industrial Revolution. This practice can still be used by certain people, but I must warn you that what you will partake in is extremely dangerous. You must follow all instructions perfectly, or else your life will forever be endangered. Now, you might be asking yourselves, what is the Dead Poets game? In the late 1800s, stories of ghosts and goblins were circling all throughout Northern Europe. Everybody only thought of these spirits as mere fairy tales. It was of course all too true when one night, at the London Theatre, someone performed this exact game in front of a large audience. This man was a psychic who was mostly renowned for his unbelievable talent of precognition. Alexander Kingsley was his name. He mostly performed magic tricks and various other acts of illusion that even I can't figure out. One of which was when he seemingly cut off his own foot and then reattached it in only 60 seconds. Of course, I'm just getting sidetracked. With the craze of the ghosts and demons becoming famous throughout the world, Alex used this to his advantage. He was gonna play a little game that he had heard of and wanted to test out if it was real or not. The items needed are a candle, 2 glasses of wine, a table, and 2 chairs. You'll see why later. Alexander heard the tales of what would happen if he played the game and thought it would be a good idea in order to bring in profit. You see, at the time, his tricks had, well, gotten a little stale if you know what I mean. The idea of actually summoning a ghost on stage was the perfect idea to reel in a crowd. Soon, posters and advertisements were plastered all across London. Come and see the mysterious ace, for tonight at 8 o'clock he will summon the undead from their peaceful slumber. Come and see for yourself at the London Theatre House. Of course, this was back when literally everyone was a gullible idiot. Although nothing has really changed, now has it? At that very night, Alexander, or Ace, was gonna perform the game improperly. He wasn't acquainted with the key rules one has to follow. The rules. 1. You have to be alone. 2. You have to do it in the place of where someone has died. 3. You have to take everything seriously. Alex was disrespecting these rules to the core, and the punishment for not following these rules are, well, you'll see later. The setup you have to follow is that you have to be in the vicinity of where someone had recently passed away. In fact, you need to place your table on the exact place in which they had died. You need to put your chair where the victim's head was pointing, and the other where the legs were. It also matters who died. It needs to be the body of a poet, hence the name. A poet can also be described as a calm, well-spoken, and nice soul. So if your husband was a very humble and collected person, then you can play this game. The reason for this is because, when you'll contact the spirit, it'll often take the shape of a soul trapped in that area. If you want to have a nice conversation with the spirit, you wouldn't want it taking the shape of a demon now, would you? This brings us to the first rule. Be alone. If you aren't alone, then the spirit may possess the poor soul who didn't sit down in the head chair, as I call it. And trust me, it is very hard to save a soul from this fate. If the other person gets possessed, the ghost will have full control over the body. Sometimes, if it's a demon, then your friend may do unspeakable things to you and anyone around him or her. The same rules apply if you don't sit down in the head chair, or if you don't have the table placed in the right spot. If you're like me, at this point, you've probably predicted the fate of Alexander and his audience. But trust me when I say this, Not following the rule in which you're supposed to act in a sensible manner is the worst one of them all. And poor Alex was a 19th century magician with brightly flamboyant colors for clothes. Not following this could haunt you for the rest of your days, but the fact that Alex was breaking all of these rules was even worse. To properly play, you must lock yourself in the room, closing all the blinds, and be sure to do it at night. No light must be in the room at this time, except for the faint flickers of light emanating from the candle that you need to place on the table. Take out the 2 wine glasses and pour both glasses with the alcohol of your choosing. This symbolizes a peace offering to the spirit, showing that you mean no harm to him or her. I should remind you that you must have no form of technology inside the room. Also, you must make sure that you have no way of contacting anyone else in the outside world. To start, you must call to the spirit that you mean no harm to them. You pour their glass and raise your own and take a sip. If you have done this correctly, after lowering your glass, there will be someone sitting across from you. At this point, you must not display any signs of fear in your voice or your facial expressions. You must not provoke the spirit in any way. You must act sensible. To start the game, you must say, "I wish to start a match." The ghost will usually nod and raise the glass. The spirit will be taking the appearance and personality of the deceased body of your choosing. Remember that. You must treat the spirit as if it actually is the body in the room. If you don't, then you will be met with weird looks and eventual frustration and anger. Of course, nobody in their right mind would want to mess with a ghost. To play, you have to say what letter you want to be, either A or B. To say it, you must say, "I strip you of the letter. Say your letter." If done properly, the spirit will take another sip. I should remind you that every time the entity takes a drink, you must too, for this will be your timer. When both glasses are empty, the spirit will leave. If both glasses are uneven, the spirit will not leave until you have finished. Now again, you might be thinking to yourself, "That isn't so hard. All I have to do to finish is to finish drinking and then he or she leaves. What's the big deal?" Well, I can certainly tell you that you would want to spend as much time away from this spirit as much as possible. This creature is purposely trying to get you drunk so that you can reveal your deepest, darkest secrets. It can find out about your personal life, your job, your family, your relationships, etc. This is just a way so that the spirit can enter your mind and slowly dissolve it. Just by choosing choice words, it can cause some people to commit suicide. Some entities have powers and abilities that we are yet to fully understand. Angering, pleasing, or agitating a spirit like this can have dire consequences. The game plays like this. Player A will ask a question, and player B will have to answer it. After the spirit answers, it'll take a sip, then the letters will alternate. Then you will be player B. The spirit will ask a question, and then take a sip. You can ask any question you want, and so can he or she. You keep alternating until you both run out of wine. When this happens, whoever is player A, when the wine runs out, automatically wins the game. If you win, the spirit will raise his or her glass and walk into the shadows. Remain seated, even when he's returned to his rightful place. blow out the candle, turn on the lights, and exit the room. It sounds relatively easy, doesn't it? Of course, what happens when you lose is a whole other story. If you lose, then the spirit will blow out the candle. Turning on the light is probably the best defense mechanism against the spirit. Ghosts aren't drawn to light and often avoid it. Still, that doesn't mean you're safe. This spirit may start following you through your life. Every time you go into a dark room, you'll see it just out of the corner of your eye. Whenever you look into a mirror, you'll see it standing right behind you. It'll stalk you and hunt you down until you finally muster up the courage to say these words: "This soul is yours. It is yours to do business with." If you say this successfully, then you black out. You will wake up in a room similar to your own, except darker and stranger. There's no doors or windows, just a bed. This spirit now has your soul, and it can choose to do whatever it wants with your body. Think of this strange realm as a sort of waiting room. As soon as someone else wants to play, you'll be summoned and be forced to play. If you lose, then you'll be forced back into that room, and you'll have to wait again. Sounds pretty fucking easy, doesn't it? Usually you are the only person in this dimension, and until you are summoned, nobody else can enter. A year before the phenomenon had spread to England and made popularized by Alex, a violent prisoner named Pierre played a game. Using the dead body area of his unlucky cellmate, he had heard of this game and had heard of the effects. He thought that if he lost and was summoned in somewhere like England, he would be able to make his escape from life imprisonment. So, locked up in this French prison, he performed the game. He purposely lost, not knowing how horrible his fate actually was. He spent a whole year in his hellish prison, screaming in agony, banging on the concrete walls as he got no response from anyone or anything. He went insane. He became the very definition of a demon. He wasn't able to form sentences. He couldn't self-harm. He couldn't think straight. And all he could think of was leaving that hellhole. Then, one cold November night, Alexander released the demon from his cell. With no real way of a human form, and with an overwhelming audience of bodies to possess, Pierre could not control himself. He was transformed into his natural body. Except, he had aged exponentially. He stank of feces and urine. His clothes were tattered and worn out, and he was screaming like a rabid dog. He was foaming from the mouth. He attacked Alex and took his body. Pierre had become Alex. He ran out of the theater. Crowds were running after him, some calling him a genius, and others calling him a monster. Alexander automatically lost the game. He didn't follow the rules, and thus his fate had befallen him. And so, if you've learned anything from this, do not take the risk by playing this game. It'll ruin you. It'll destroy you. It'll dismantle the very fabric of your world. If you do choose to play this game, I suggest playing alone.